Hello. Excited to introduce today's guest, another first timer on our podcast telling her story. We'll get right into it. This is Magali she's coming to us from Toronto, but not originally from Toronto.
Yeah,
Hi.
welcome. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Um,
being here. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I want to hear your story. So start at the beginning. How would you like to tell it?
my name is Magali. I was born in Sri Lanka in 1992, and I was adopted when I was 2 months old by French parents. Um, my parents went through this adoption agency that was located in France, and they were taking care of all the adoptions in Sri Lanka at this time because it was open, I think, from like 1985 to maybe 1993 or 4.
Mm,
They were dealing with these adoptions, and they went through this agency that organized everything for them. And then they went there, spent a whole month to take care with all the administration work, documents, and all of this. And then they finally got me.
Wait, I'm
So I was
curious. So there were only adoptions between 1985 and 1993, never prior and not after?
It was, but so the country, there was a big war in the country.
Mm-hmm.
hmm I
I
remember
don't
that.
know if it was because of that that it wasn't open the entire time, but
Oh,
I know they had like specific like years that they were allowing people to adopt in Sri Lanka.
okay. And how did your parents, how did you come to be placed for adoption? Do you know that?
So apparently, um, my birth mother was not able financially, and yeah, she was like too poor to keep me. That
hmm
was the story that I've been told. And when my parents went to Sri Lanka to get me, um, they actually met her. So
Oh,
she gave me away to them. So they met in 1992.
okay. So they knew who your mother was and all of it.
They
Okay.
knew who she was, they took pictures, and maybe they saw her like twice or something like this, but they didn't really like get to talk. It was very formal. And yeah, and then they took me back to France.
And did they have any other children prior to you or
No, I'm the only one.
okay. And how was it? They were obviously must have been very open with you that you were adopted. I mean, there would have been
Yeah,
no doubt.
yeah. They always told me, and since I mean I don't remember how old, but as soon as I could understand things. And they always told me, they always, I had this big like photo album with their trip to Sri Lanka. So they showed me pictures of their trip. They showed me also the pictures they took with my birth mother. And they
Mm,
always said, this was your mother, like, know that when she gave you away, she was crying. You could tell that at this time, she probably didn't have a choice to keep you. So they always tell me about it, and they had this whole document with their names. So my birth mother and birth father, their names, their date of birth, where they lived at this time. I have a whole document with these details. Um, so they always showed it to me, and they said, whenever you want and if you want, um, we'll go back to Sri Lanka, and maybe we can do some research and see if we can find them, but we don't promise anything. They might,
yeah.
not be there anymore. They might have moved, we don't know, but know that this is an option.
Okay.
Has it struck you since, and now that you're older and you've listened to our podcast and other stuff, does it strike you how, I don't know, the fact
Yeah.
that they were poor, your parents had money, so they took you, right? That there's no resources for, that this is the reason why women lose their children,
Yeah.
economics. And
Economic.
and I'm wondering if that's ever entered your mind.
A little bit, but a little bit, but I also understand that, yeah, it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't bother me, but it's not like a big question that I had. It was more about, why do you want to give up, your kid, at,
Yeah.
like it at first. I mean, yeah, why how do you get to do this? And I'm not judging, I'm just trying to understand, like, how did you feel when you did that?
Yeah.
Like what made you make this decision? And like, do you regret it? Like, are you sad? Are you happy about it? Like, I kind of want to know, their side of the story, because there is my side, and this is how I feel, this is how I lived and how I grew up.
Yeah.
But, what happened in all this time that you knew that one of your child was out in the wild, you don't know if the family that you found or like you gave your kid to was a good family. You don't know.
Right. Yeah, the
So yeah,
worry for that. Well, when you were growing up, how did you feel about being adopted? Were you happy with your family? Did you
yeah,
feel,
I had a pretty like easy life, if I can
Mhm,
say that, because I
mhm.
also read other people's stories, and I was like, "Ooh, I didn't even
Yeah.
know that was an option to not be in a good family."
Yeah.
Um, so I had a pretty happy childhood. Like, my parents were great. I had a good family, good friends. So I cannot complain about that. I think it was more about where do I fit in, because I grew up in a small town in France that was
Hmm.
mostly white.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or like, people were not from Sri Lanka at all. There were
No, I'm
people from
sure.
Africa, from other countries, but not Sri Lanka. So it was always like, where do I fit? Like, because
Yeah.
I'm not white, but I'm not Sri Lankan either. So it was more about finding who I was.
So did you go about the process to find them, and have you found them?
So for years, I wanted to find them because I wanted to have, answers and see who I was actually looking like.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, for a few years I was thinking about finding them, but then I didn't really, do anything or say anything. I didn't really know how to start. I had their address, so I think one day I sent like a mail, like a letter. I posted I posted it, and then it came back to me like a few months later, and it said like it didn't find like
Oh,
the people. So I felt like, oh, I don't know, maybe they moved and I will never find them again. Um, And a few years later, when I was 16, my parents asked me, do you want to travel to Sri Lanka and see, where are you from? And like, see
yeah.
your country, see the country, and just visit it. And I said, sure, let's go. And a few months ago, so we went with one of my mom's friend. Um, And this friend used to go to Sri Lanka almost every year because he was just in love with the country and the culture and everything. So he made he became friend with the guide that he had over there, and told us, well, if you want, I can ask my friend, the guide, if he wants to organize this whole trip. So he can show us around. He's very nice. He speaks French. So my parents were like, yeah, sure. Like, let's have him, plan the whole trip
Yeah.
and show us around. And I asked him, I said, do you think we can ask him to maybe look for my birth family and, give him the details we have, the photos we have, and see if we can like do something about it? And they were like, well, yeah, we can try and see. We might not have any answers, but if you want to, then we'll do it. So that's what we did. And, a few months later, like, no news, and we were about to like leave to Sri Lanka for the trip.
And you were with
And
your parents at this time, or
You were 16, I think, right?
so I
Is that
was
right?
16
yes,
and I
Oh,
okay,
okay.
went with
sorry.
my
Yeah.
parents
Okay.
and my mom's friend who,
Was right.
who knew the guide. And a few months ago, before the trip, we received an email or a call, I don't remember, and it was the guide, so his name was Francis, who found my birth mother.
Oh,
And he sent us a picture of her and her sister. And when we looked at the picture, my parents were like, yeah, this is her. Like this is her.
they
Like
knew.
no doubt. No doubt, that's her. And I was like,
How
whoa.
did you feel when you saw that?
I was like happy, excited. I was, I don't know, like a mixed
Yeah.
emotions, right? I was
Yes.
like,
And
what's
you
gonna
and
happen?
it's your aunt as well,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Her
my aunt.
sister.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So
so when you went to Sri Lanka, you're 16, you did go on the trip, right?
yes,
Did you meet them? Did you meet her?
yes,
And
Okay.
yeah.
was there any, did you have any sort of feelings about your adoptive parents? Like, was there any kind of guilt on your part, or was that not quite part of your consciousness?
At this point, not at all. Not at all. And I guess they were also maybe hiding it if they had any, because they
Hmm.
wanted me to find where I was from, to have the answers and like,
They
yeah,
weren't
to
they weren't
see
putting their
where I was from.
emotions on you if they had them.
No,
Yeah.
I don't, I actually don't know how they felt. We never actually talked about it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess I was
That's actually nice to
excited.
hear, honestly. That they're so open and wanted you to have your history. I think that's
Yeah.
important for people to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. And now like thinking about it, I'm like, how? How did they find the strength to do that? Because it's like I can't imagine being a parent and like have your own kid finding, you know, their birth parents, their birth family, and like, yeah.
Well, I mean, though, when a hopefully, maybe when adoptive and an enlightened
Yes.
adoptive parent takes somebody else's child, that is somebody else's child. And you know what I mean? There's all the stuff that comes along with that. So anyway, it's a complicated situation.
For sure, for sure. And I think on both sides, I mean on our three sides, right? Because there is me, there's my parents and my birth family, and like I know everybody has their own like feeling and story, but
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that my parents like allowed me to do this, especially at this age, because
Hmm.
I was still, I was still young, and they were kind of like in charge of it, right? Like
Right.
I did
I
have
was
my say
yeah.
in this, but
I was thinking that because so many adoptees go through life with the heaviness, the guilt, and you're in your teens where you can start dealing with this and figuring this out. So when you got there, did you have to go on like a tour of Sri Lanka first, or did you get to meet them? Like I would be on pins and needles, so curious about
so
that.
we went there for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
I went there 3 times. So the first time where I met them, we went there for 3 weeks. And we actually, the guide did like a whole tour of the island, and towards the end of the trip, that's where we met because it fit like on the map. That
Right.
Oh, you
was one
must
of
have been
our
just
I know. I'd be
nervous
like,
the whole time.
yeah. Honestly, I was just discovering everything. Like it was a new, yeah, culture,
how
life.
did you feel there when you were
Yeah, I was
there?
just going to ask, did you
Yeah.
feel, was there a part of you that in your cellular level knew that this was home?
I think a little bit. I
Hmm.
think a little bit because I could see people looking like me, that having the same color and all of this, but also I felt very like alone.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's mostly because of the language.
Hmm.
Because everybody over there, like they saw my parents, so they could think that, I was with them. But maybe they didn't understand because our guide was from there. So maybe they thought, I don't know what they thought, but
Right.
people over there, were talking to me in their own language, which is
Yeah.
Sinhalese. And, I couldn't understand anything. And they expected me to respond. And I was like, and this was very, very hard
Yeah.
to
It's like
be
you're
there
Had
and
you
not,
not
you're,
being
had you
able to communicate.
yeah.
had your parents, when you were in France, tried to find your culture and introduce you to it, or was that just no, you grew up in this small town and there wasn't any access? So was there any attempt to give you the history of your culture?
A little bit, I think, and it's with, what they brought from the first trip they went to. I mean, when they brought me back, um, I guess they showed me what they brought back. They showed me a little bit of what they knew about it, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they took the time to learn about the culture,
Right.
you know. Um, and no, when I was a kid, there was not, well, on the internet, because I was trying to look, online, for like Sri Lankan stuff, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
honestly, I couldn't find anything at this time. I don't remember what year it was, but I was, yeah, like 14 when I started,
Yeah.
looking for answers and all of this, and there was nothing online. It was all about like India, but nothing about Sri Lanka. It was such a tiny
Interesting.
island that I feel
Yeah.
like it wasn't out there yet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
The
yeah, not
internet's
not too
changed a
much.
lot too. Right. Of
Mhm.
course. So we've
Yeah.
had other guests on the podcast that have had that, going to their country of origin and feeling that way too, lonely a little bit, like alone,
Mhm.
because you're not of either, right? It's kind of an interesting thing. So how did it go at the end?
Yes, when you met.
It was a very, I feel like I felt like a million emotions at once,
Hmm.
and it was very, very hard. So the guide and the driver that we had went to pick up my birth mom and her sister and brought them to the hotel we were staying at. And that was the first time I met her in person, and it was very weird because she was in front of me, but she couldn't look at me,
Oh,
or
Oh.
she didn't want to look at me.
right.
It felt like she was too embarrassed to look at me.
Oh.
Um, so it was really hard because my aunt was like so bubbly and talking, and like she had so much energy, and my birth mom was like very, yeah, closed off, and like
Yeah.
she didn't show anything.
Had she been young when she gave birth to you?
She was 33.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, 33 or 35. 33.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's probably, well, that's just trauma, right? I mean, probably couldn't even handle it. That's
Not
probably
to
why the
mention
aunt is,
that
yeah.
your parents were there too. So she probably, they're
Oh, it's so,
French parents that had the means to take care of you, and here she
yeah.
is not without the means, and probably felt shame and
Oh,
pain and
yeah,
guilt and all of
exactly.
those things, that all
Yeah.
wrapped up in. So you're both having these big feelings.
Yeah, for sure. And it was hard once again because we couldn't communicate. We
Right.
had
Hmm.
to go through the guide translation, so it was hard.
Did,
I think this was the hardest part to me, not to meet her, but just to not being able to talk.
yeah.
Hmm. Oh.
And
What, did she have other children at this time? What, was she
yeah,
married?
so she has four,
Okay.
older than me.
Oh, so she
So
was,
this
she
I
was an
knew.
older mother,
Yeah.
had some children, then had you and couldn't economically handle it.
That's what
Is
they
that,
told me.
uh-huh. And that may not be the
Is there a
case.
different story?
I still don't know the exact
Mm,
story. I still don't know the truth, but I think that I might not have the same dad.
okay. I was
Uh-huh.
wondering if it was a shame situation, like
I think so, because they built this whole story about it. So when we met, my aunt was just talking, doing the talk, right? She was explaining the story. She was telling us all these details, and like at first I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But then like thinking about it, like after all these years, I'm like, no, something's not adding up. Which
Mm-hmm.
is, this is her story. She doesn't need to tell me, this is her version. This is her story. She doesn't need to share it with anybody if she doesn't want to. Um, but I don't think this is the truth.
So I want to ask you something. So that you have 4 siblings that are older, half siblings. Was she still married to their dad
So
or with him, or was he alive?
apparently he died before I was born.
Okay. And so
So
maybe there was another man.
That's the story.
Right.
that's the story.
Mm-hmm.
But the story that my aunt told us was that when she was pregnant with me, so my birth dad died apparently, and she was too poor to handle another child. So she pretended she found a job somewhere else, and she's a tea, what's the word? Forgot the word. A tea picker
Oh,
in
okay.
Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she was doing this job, and she said that she found a job somewhere else, so pretty far away from where they lived. She went there to have me and then came back, but she hid the fact that
Mm.
she had another baby
From the other children too.
from the other children and the whole
From
family.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she
I
must have
agree.
only shared that with her sister.
Two of her sisters and my cousin who was my age at the yeah.
So you went back a couple times. So you've
And
met
yeah.
siblings and cousins.
I met so the first time I met my birth mom and her sister, and the next day they invited us over to their
Oh,
house.
okay.
And so by then, at that point, she had told your siblings about you? Oh, no.
No.
I keep jumping ahead. Sorry.
No, no. So the next day we went there with my parents and my mom's friend. My mom's friend's still in the picture, right? He's always with
Right.
us. So they were probably like, what is he doing here? But so we went there and we were invited to my aunt's for lunch. And on the way, my parents were like, you know, we don't know where they live. They're probably very poor, so don't expect seeing like a big house or like luxury, right? And I was like, yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, and on the way, like I could see these like little shacks that were homes, and I was like, this is where we are gonna go. This is their house. And we got there, and it was a big house, a big
Oh,
house. It was a nice house, concrete with a roof, with rooms, with walls.
this is your aunt's house.
This is my aunt's house. And
Hmm.
I was like, huh, I guess they're not that poor. In
Interesting.
my mind, I was like, well, I thought they were poor, but they're not poor. But this is also my version of like them not being poor. I don't know, if
And
Right.
you
they
were
can afford
16
food.
and
And I was 16, but
right.
yeah, we got there. My aunt was, welcoming us, so she knew who I was. This is another aunt, so the second
Mm.
aunt that knew me, and I guess she knew who I was, and she just welcomed me like so warm. I was like, okay, cool. So she showed us the house. It was nice. We had lunch. They prepared like, little things to snack. It was good. And I met my cousin who was my age. She knew me also.
This is your aunt's daughter.
This is my aunt's daughter, and we had the other aunt who was with my birth mom the day before was also there. So it was kind of familiar, like I could recognize these people. And then my two brothers arrived, but they didn't know who I was.
Okay.
So how did they, what did they say? How did they introduce you?
So my aunt, who loves creating stories,
Okay.
made up this entire crazy story
Oh my
that
goodness.
Hmm.
she met us at the hospital she worked at, and she just invited us over, you know.
And you're having to kind of go along with this story knowing these are your brothers. Did you know they were your brothers?
Yes, I knew. Yeah, I knew.
Okay.
Yeah, because they told us like your brothers are coming. Um,
Don't
but
pretend you're not.
it was such a like shit show, honestly. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like
How much older were the brothers? Are the brothers?
so the youngest one was 4 years older than me, so he was 20 at this time, and the other one was, I think, 24, something like this.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you
Did
know, like they saw me as like a European, Sri Lankan, whatever person. Was very weird.
It is very weird. Why?
Did they pick up on anything, or
Yeah.
did they buy the story?
I think they bought it. That my aunt was very, very good at like lying, you
Why
know?
have them over? That's the weird part.
Yeah.
What's the
Nothing made sense. Nothing made sense.
what were your parents? Were your parents sort of just watching too? Like, okay, no one knows what to do, I guess. That would be
Yeah, it was I guess we understood that it was a weird situation and that my birth mom didn't maybe want to like, you know, like have this whole story out like right away. Like I guess we all could understand that, so we kind of went along with that.
yeah.
But you know, now that we are talking about it, I'm like, this was crazy. Like we should have said something. But also this was not our I don't think it was my place to say anything or my parents' place
And
to
you
say
were
anything.
16, that's a the heavy burden for a 16-year-old to
You're
A, expect you to go along with it, and B, just even being there to begin with is
you're in their
with your
home.
adoptive parents. So, there's that dynamic. Even in in the best
Yeah.
of circumstances, I can't imagine that that's super comfortable, having both.
It would be bizarre.
It was so uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable, and at the same time I felt like, you know, I had some like family back. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was weird because my two brothers had like this tuk-tuk, and they took me and my cousin to like this nice waterfall that was like close to the house. So we I just went with them somewhere I didn't know, like with I couldn't communicate with them, and I just went there. My parents left me, let me go. Now that I think about it, you know, it was insane. But yeah, I guess kind of felt safe with them also, even though it was very weird and I couldn't say anything.
Yeah. So you've
Weird.
kept up with that cousin, it sounds like. Have you? Or
Yeah,
in the
what
It,
past?
it
happens? So you leave the trip, you go back, and do you just get back into your normal life, yet you have this other life? How were you navigating that at such a young age? The
honestly,
feelings of it all.
it was tough. It was really tough, and like so I was, yeah, so I was 16 and I was in high school, and
Yeah.
like the following year, because we went in August and in September I was starting this new, you know, like high school year. Like this year I was just messed up.
Messed up. Yeah.
I I was, yeah, depressed, I was sad, I was angry, like I had all the feelings coming up, and I
Yeah.
did not know how to deal with that.
I'm
It
sure.
was tough, and beside that, like so I think at some point during this year, my birth mom told everybody who I was,
Oh, okay.
and you know, my brothers were texting me,
Oh,
my aunt was texting me, my cousin was texting me, or calling me, and I did not know what they were saying, you know. I was like, just tell me in English, like I'll figure it out. But in this language, I just had like one friend who could speak that language, and I kept like asking him, you know, can you translate? And it was so annoying.
It was like
Yeah.
pre-Google Translate, I'm guessing.
It was
Yeah,
pre
right?
Google
How
Translate,
helpful
and
that would have been.
yeah,
Wow.
it was tough. It was really tough, and
Well, plus they're like coming into your life and then that's hard for anybody. 16, 17 is not an easy time for that.
it's
Yeah.
not, it's not. And we went back to Sri Lanka with my parents 2 years later. And 2 years later, I met the entire family,
Wow. And they knew who you were.
and they knew who I was. So
This,
I met my two older sisters. So I have two older sisters and two brothers. So I met those two brothers,
And
but
were
the
they
two
happy
sisters,
to have you in their life, like excited about it?
I think so. I think so. It seemed like, yeah, they were happy to meet me. My two sisters had like two or three kids each. They had husbands. So I met them also. I think I met maybe a third aunt, something like this. So at this point, like I kind of knew everybody.
mm-hmm.
Um, but
Can
my
I ask you, did you get to go to your mother's house? Or did this all
Yes,
take
so
okay.
after we went to my aunt's house, the first
The first
year,
trip?
the next day, or the same day, I think, we went to my birth mother's house. And same thing, you know, it was like a decent house. You know, they didn't have much inside,
Right.
but you know, they had walls, they had a roof, and yeah, and there was a picture of my dad
Mm.
who passed away, right? That's what they told us. And you know, when I looked at this picture, I was like, I don't see any resemblance.
And did you have a lot of resemblance with your siblings, or was there a little?
Yes, a little,
Mm-hmm.
but you can tell like the four of them really look alike,
Right.
and I don't, and I
So
don't.
so I,
So
I I have a feeling your story is probably more true and accurate, right? Like there was
I think so.
Have you
something
gotten
shameful.
any answers about that yet? Is
No,
there a
they don't
DNA
want to tell
database
me.
in is there a DNA database in
Yeah, I
Sri
was thinking
Lanka?
that.
I haven't. You mean like the test that we can do, like the
Yes.
genetic
Right,
test?
like Ancestry or 23andMe. Is there anything that has a Sri Lankan
Um,
connection?
I haven't done it, and I was thinking about maybe doing it. I'm not sure yet,
You're not
but yeah,
there, yeah.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
lot. I mean, you're tackled a lot already.
I
What's
did, and yeah, yeah.
what's the
I'm
relationship now? Like with your
So now we don't talk anymore
mm,
at all. I just
hmm.
blocked everybody.
What happened in the intervening years? So you're no longer in France, you're in Canada and you're married. So how did that come about and the
mm-hmm.
trajectory of your relationships with both your adopted parents and your birth family?
So I think the following year, so the last time I went to Sri Lanka was 2015. Uh, yes, 2015. And this time, my parents, I still went with my parents, and they asked me like, do you wanna meet with your like family while we are there? And I just said no. I don't want to see anybody. Because every time we left Sri Lanka after seeing them, I was just so messed up.
Oh,
And honestly, it was just too hard. And I said, you know what? No, this time we're just having fun. We're just visiting and seeing, you know, this beautiful country, and that's it. That's enough. Like I don't need to see or do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
were
so no,
you
I
sad when you say when you left you when you would leave you would become depressed? Is that because of feeling the displacement and the not belonging anywhere and it just kicked all that stuff up and did you feel like it was just better leaving that someplace else?
Yeah, I think it was like a whole, it was like not like still being confused with like identity, like
Yeah.
the culture, whatever I liked, in France, whatever I was connected to, but also what I wasn't connected to. And
Yeah.
it was a whole like it was a whole thing. It was about the language, it was about the culture, it was about like the answers I would have wanted to have.
Yeah.
Um and I think I just, after a few years, I just decided that, it couldn't, it shouldn't just take me down that much, right? Like, because it wasn't worth it. And like, I didn't want to just be depressed because of
Yeah.
their, well, of this story.
So, so you've said you blocked them. So they've tried to reach you, you've blocked them. Do you feel that you'll
So
open that communication at all?
I don't think so, maybe, but I don't think so because so the following years, so around 2015, or I don't remember when it started, but maybe like a year after I saw them for the second time, they just reached out to me to ask for money.
Oh,
Oh,
It
this
was
happened to
also,
somebody else we had on too. That's painful. Yeah.
yeah. And they were telling me these stories, like the roof collapsed, like we need money to fix it, or this person needs surgery, like we need help, we need this. And I was like, if you are only talking to me to get money out of me, I mean, first of all, I'm still super young. I don't have a job, like I don't have money. Like my parents have money, but not me.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I can help you, first of all. And also, like, I didn't want to be this, like, golden, I don't know, child we gave up for adoption just to like bring money, right? Like, I felt so like mad.
Yeah.
was it coming
I
from everybody in the family, like, or just your mother, your biological mother?
so it was just from my oldest sister and my cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It's actually not my birth mother. I don't know if she was behind that, but I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. And it was just like them thinking, she's European, she has lots of money, she can help us
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I'm
And
sorry. That's painful. I'm sorry.
yeah, it was. And I think it also helped me, to kind of move on and like kind of close this whole chapter and focus on something else. But a few years ago, I blocked them because they kept like calling me on Facebook. Oh yeah, and they had Facebook at some point, and I was like, I thought you were poor.
Yeah.
Once again, how can you have Facebook and internet when you're asking me for money? It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And I feel
And
bad for your mom, your birth mom, in the lost in the shuffle here. Her pain, yeah. And your relationship that could have been sort of, or maybe will be, I don't know.
yeah, I don't think she was like I don't think she wanted me to help them, or maybe she was hoping that I could help them, but I don't think she was behind all these texts and letters to ask for money. But I know that, so I blocked them. And yeah, it was just too much. I was too angry to deal with that. And I the only solution that I found at this moment was just to block everyone and just move on and not talk to them anymore. And a few years ago, it was during COVID, and I just thought I would love to know if there is any, diseases in the family, any cancers, anything that I should know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked um a person that I knew there to call them and just ask. Like, I had a list of questions, and I also asked about my birth dad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and apparently my sister answered the phone and did not answer any of these questions. And she said, Mom can't hear well enough, so I'm just ending the call.
Nice.
So I never had any answers,
I
and
still
that was
don't.
it. I
Yeah.
still don't.
Mm, wow. Well, that's a
Um,
lot for you to carry around and deal with it. It might be worth another shot at least getting your medical information.
for DNA for your father,
Yeah.
possibly.
You
Mhm.
know, I thought it was kind of like a legit question. I mean, I thought I at least she could give me answers to these questions. I mean, I think I earned it. I don't know.
Yeah, of
Of
Maybe
course you
not.
course.
have, and who knows if that was your sister gatekeeping, right?
Right.
In
I
a
think
in a
so.
way because she was angry about
That's what I
you
think.
not giving money. I
It's
would
possible.
perhaps try to pursue that more, just stay on top of it. It is
It's
important to know
possible.
your health information if you can get it.
Yeah. And you know, I'll get it. I mean, I'm not too worried about that anymore. I mean, but yeah, I wish she would have just answered. But when this happened, I was like, okay, I guess this is it. This is this is it for me with them. Like I should just forget about them because at the end, like they're not, I don't know, they're not bringing anything good, you know, like they're not good for me.
Yeah.
And
For your
Have
maybe I'm
you
mental
wrong.
health. Yeah.
have you found a therapist that is informed with adoption trauma stuff?
No, and that's another thing, you know, in France, like it's still not seen as like good, not good for you, but like it's not something we talk about. It's and
Right.
people don't go to, you know, to therapy,
No.
or it's still seen as like, oh, something's wrong with you.
What about in
And
Canada?
I thought about it, and then I actually started learning and like doing some like coaching with like self-development, you know, tools,
Mm-hmm.
programs,
Mhm.
and it helped a lot. And I think that I learned a lot about myself, about, you know, who I was and how I reacted to things through this kind of work.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
there's
yeah.
probably adoptee groups in Toronto that you could, adoptee support groups that you could probably meet with, and that is helpful.
It
Both of us
is.
have found how helpful that
Yeah.
is, and
Just talking with
Yeah,
other adoptees because they get it, right? And everyone
yeah,
has a different thing, but you get what you're talking about, the loneliness and
yeah.
things you've been
It
through.
it's funny because like a few, I mean, oh, a long time ago, I was part of this uh, French, you know, kids who were adopted abroad, and I met this other girl who was born in Sri Lanka, and we actually became friends, and that was before. This was 2 years before I went to Sri Lanka for the first time. So we kind of became friends, and you know, we had the same like questions and same everything. So it was very nice, but then it just got too complicated, you know, to deal with this whole story and these like questions and all of this. So I kind of stopped talking to her.
Hmm.
Um, um, and then I looked at Facebook groups or like just conversational groups about that, and it was just too angry for me. Like people
Yeah.
were too. I might not have found the right group, but
Yeah, I was
I
gonna say
thought that
there's some that are good. Yeah. There are
and
some that you may feel are too angry, but there's some good ones. And also there's possibly groups in your area that meet in person that are you just don't know, right?
yeah, it's possible, but it's really interesting because this podcast is actually the first time that I'm actually talking about it like in public.
No.
So I might do
Yeah. Well, and
it.
I mean, we're much older than you. I'll speak for both of us. you're so young. You have so much left to figure out. Like you don't, it's all in your own time, right? And you've done a lot so early. A lot was put on you very early with this that would be very difficult to navigate. I mean, I think of myself in that position at that age, that would have been really overwhelming. So,
Yeah.
you know, you have a lot of, you can take your time and it's good that you recognize what wasn't good for you mentally. I mean,
You're for emotionally to be,
mm-hmm.
yeah, taking care of yourself. It sounds like you have
Yes.
a
Yeah.
supportive husband.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
helped
Yeah.
find
He's
the
amazing.
podcast.
Who did we hear this a lot in our podcast couples, you know, the spouse often has said, you know, why don't you check out a podcast? Why don't you? Because I think they too deal with our stuff, right? Of
Of
course.
course.
So yeah, well, you are kind of early, you know, in in your journey of figuring
Yes.
all this out, and it's admirable that you started
Yeah.
so young and made healthy decisions for yourself. And I know it's painful, you know,
Yeah.
to feel like being used for a possible cash cow situation. Poverty does horrible things to people.
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
uh, desperation. And so
Yeah, it does.
I hope you're able to know that and not take that personally, you know.
Yeah, I know that. I understand it now. And also one of my friend who his parents were from Sri Lanka, he explained to me that even for him, because he grew up in France, like his relatives who live in Sri Lanka still, we're asking them for money.
Hmm.
So I know it's also in the culture to hope that someone who lives
Will
abroad
help.
will help. I understand it also. So it yeah.
I mean, understanding it on an intellectual level
Right.
and
The
Yeah,
feelings.
and
Yeah.
being okay with it also.
is
Yeah,
two
it's two
different
different
things.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm also very happy that, this happened when I was so young.
Hmm.
It was challenging, it was hard and terrifying, but like now I know that I can finally talk about it and help other people dealing with
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
So I think that, even if it was hard, but I'm also grateful that it happened.
Yeah. Well,
But
we're
yeah,
Well,
we're we're grateful to have met you. You're
yeah,
just
thank
me
you
bright
too.
so
light.
much for coming on and telling your story and your vulnerability
Yes.
and really happy you were here and appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I
No, thank
feel
you very
really
much.
deep about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So nice to have met you and stay in touch with us.
Please.
I
And
will.
we'll send support that we find along the way.
Yes.
So we'll
Yes.
send you some things.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.